Yeah.
Kansas went just 3-9 in 2019. Good enough to tie their best mark for the entire decade. But can the Jayhawks continue to improve in 2020? Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, the best kept secret in all of college football. Today, bringing you our 2020 Kansas Jayhawks college football predictions. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below, where you can visit our new website, thegridironexpert.com, and also follow us on our social media pages over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So guys, Kansas has not been to a bowl game since the 2007 season. But I have a feeling that's going to change very, very soon now that they are led under head coach Les Miles, the Mad Hatter. And in year one, he led Kansas to what was one of their best seasons in the entire decade. And I know that is a very sad thing to say because 3-9 is not a great season. But the Jayhawks won 3 games. They won 2 games over Power 5 opponents. And they had just 3 losses by 1 possession. They had 2 losses by 5 points and 1 loss by 2 points. If things go the Jayhawks' way, they would have gone bowling in 2019. But you look at the squad, guys, in 2020, and you can't help but wonder, are the Jayhawks going to improve? Or are they going to continue to take a step forward under Les Miles? Because not only is the schedule relatively difficult, very wide open Big 12, I should add, but Kansas still has their work cut out for them in one of the biggest rebuilding projects in all of college football. We take a look at their offense here, guys. They returned 6 starters, and it was really a tale of 2 halves for Kansas offense in 2020. The first 6 games, they were very stagnant. Really wasn't much explosiveness there. About midway through the season, Les Miles realized that and promoted Brent Dearmon to offensive coordinator. And you saw Kansas put up numbers such as 48 points against Texas, 37 points against Texas Tech, a game that they did win, and 31 points against Iowa State. But then you also saw Dearmon's offense put up showings like 10 points against Kansas State, 13 points against Oklahoma State, and 6 points against Baylor. So while you saw flashes of brilliance, while you saw what this Kansas offense could look like, what you really saw was just a lot of inconsistency. So Kansas has to figure out a way to stay explosive, to keep their foot on the gas, to stay consistent offensively this year. And I would say that they would be able to do that if they hadn't have lost their quarterback in Carter Stanley. He put up some of the greatest numbers by a Kansas quarterback in the past decade. And of course, because they're Kansas, they lose that quarterback after this year. Which means that 2020 pits a quarterback battle between the sophomore Miles Kendrick and Thomas McVitie, who has a few games under his belt as starter for the Jayhawks, but these two only combined for 1 pass attempt in 2019, and that 1 pass attempt happened to be an interception. So the quarterback is a major area of concern, major questions there. The running back position is not. We all know that Pooka Williams is one of the best running backs in the Big 12 this season. He rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. And keep in mind that the top 3 wide receivers for Kansas are back in 2020. So as they can find themselves a quarterback, there's a chance that Dearmon's offense could take that extra step forward and maybe win a few more games this upcoming season. We look at the defense here, guys. Kansas only returns 3 starters on that side of the ball. They ranked 122nd in total defense last year, 8 spots away from being the worst defense in the country. They allowed 36.1 points per game. And when you look at it, guys, I know returning starters aren't everything, but Kansas loses their top 2 tacklers from last year. They lose their sack leader from last year. They lose their interception leaders from last year. They're just depleted across the board. So I think the defense is going to struggle a lot more than the offense is going to struggle this year. And it's something that I really think in an offensive-led Big 12 is really going to be a difference maker this year and really a disadvantage for Kansas in their quest to try to improve on that 3-win season that they had in 2019. We'll take a look at their schedule, though. Let's see what Les Miles can do. He's called the Mad Hatter for a reason. Let's see what he's able to conjure up in 2020 to show that Kansas fans that he is still the right man for the job and to continue to trust in the process. Keep in mind, guys, we are filming this video. At the time of this video, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are the only teams to have canceled their non-conference games. They're really the only conferences that have given us any sort of insight on what they plan to do for this upcoming season. Since the Big 12 has not given us anything, since Kansas does not play a Big 10 or Pac-12 opponent, we're predicting every single game on the Jayhawks record. We have them opening up with a win against New Hampshire. Not an automatic victory by any means. We've seen Kansas in recent years struggle against inferior opponents, especially out of the FCS. Last year only taking down Indiana State by 7 in their season opener. But I think Kansas does get the win over New Hampshire. I do think they fall, though, to Baylor, a team they lost to 61-6 last year. And while we do know that Baylor is dealing with a brand new head coach, while we do know that they don't have a lot of starters returning on defense, even though Baylor is still very depleted on their defensive side of the ball, they're going to own that defensive edge, and they certainly own the offensive edge, led by one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 in Charlie Brewer. So I think Kansas falls big time on the road in Waco. Not an easy place to play. They are 1-1, and we're going to make them 1-2 here with a loss to Boston College. Now, this is certainly a very winnable game for Kansas. Do not get me wrong. I could very well see the Jayhawks winning this game at home, especially since they defeated Boston College 48-24 on the road in 2019. That was Kansas's first Power 5 road win in nearly 10 years. Guys, that's an unbelievable stat. An unbelievable stat for the Jayhawks. And Les Miles went in there to a solid BC team, one that did make the postseason, and ended up annihilating them. It was unbelievable. Now Boston College is dealing with a new head coach in Jeff Hafley, and also kind of like Kansas, dealing with a major rebuild up in Chestnut Hill. But I look at this, guys. The reason we're giving Boston College the win here is because, yeah, they lose A.J. Dillon, but they do return David Bailey, a very solid running back going up against a Kansas defense that allowed 225.7 rushing yards per game. So over 220 rushing yards per game they're allowing, going up against a solid offensive line and running back for Boston College. I just don't know if Kansas' defense is going to be able to shut them down. Not to mention that Boston College is out for revenge after that embarrassment at home last year. I like David Bailey to go on the road and get a huge win. I like Jeff Hafley to go on the road and get a huge win in his early tenure. Kansas falls at home to the Eagles, but bounces back with a win on the road against Coastal Carolina, a team that they actually did lose to last year 12-7. Quite the barn burner in Lawrence. One of those 5-point losses that we mentioned last year for Kansas. But I think Kansas does take a little bit of a step forward across the board. Once again, maybe not necessarily the win total, but we saw them last year in terms of their competitiveness. I think that stays there. I think that mentality and that culture has been kind of instilled in this Kansas football program, where you're not going to see them just roll over and give up like we saw a lot during this past decade. So they go on the road and take care of Coastal Carolina, a team that did allow way too many points last year, but did score over 30 points per game. So no easy test for Kansas. But like the Boston College game, a bit of revenge on their mind. We've got them at 2-2 going into the bulk of Big 12 conference play. That's where it's going to get difficult. You know, Kansas can't go bowling solely off of non-conference games alone. Even if they won all three, they'd just be 3-1, assuming they lose to Baylor. They're going to have to snag some conference wins here. We don't believe they come against Iowa State or Kansas State. We'll kind of break it down slowly but surely here. I don't think they take down Iowa State, even though they dropped 31 on the Cyclones last year. This is going to be a much better Iowa State team than we saw last year. And last year's squad was good. They had a lot of close one-possession losses last year, similar to Kansas, similar to TCU, similar to a lot of teams that we mentioned in the Big 12. Iowa State, if a couple plays go their way, they don't finish 7-5 in the regular season. Maybe they finish with 9 or 10 wins. This is the year that they actually could finish with 9 or 10 wins. 9 returning starters on defense, one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, one of my top 10 quarterbacks in the country in Brock Purdy. I just don't see any way that Iowa State loses this game, especially being in Lawrence. Even though it is in Lawrence, I still don't see any way they can lose this game. They then travel on the road to take on Kansas State, guys. And last year it was kind of one of those trendy upset picks. People thought that Kansas could take down Chris Kleiman and the Wildcats. And Kansas State said, no, they can't. And they won by 28. The Wildcats won 38-10. And I look at this Kansas State team, guys. Skylar Thompson's a great dual threat quarterback. He's really the only thing that Kansas State has going for them offensively. But they do have a very strong defense. It was one of the top 50 defenses in the country last year. They have 7 returning starters on that side of the ball. And we know Chris Kleiman is a defensive-minded coach. So I think the key for a lot of defenses going up against this Kansas offense is going to be just stop Pooka Williams. Because I think if the quarterback play struggles, and I do think it will, they're going to ride Pooka Williams as much as they can. If you take that run game away, Kansas is going to struggle offensively. I think Kansas State does just that, and they win comfortably at home. We then have back-to-back games against Oklahoma State and West Virginia before the Halloween bye week. I think they dropped the game to Oklahoma State here, a team they lost to 31-13 last year. And again, an Oklahoma State team that, as you all know, I'm pretty high on, has a lot of returning talent, one of the best trios in college football this year in Spencer Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, and Tylan Wallace, and a defense that should take another major step forward in 2020. So once again, they get to host this game. Still don't think they have a chance to take down the Cowboys. And then they go on the road to West Virginia, another one of those 5-point losses we mentioned. In Lawrence last year, they only fell to the Mountaineers 29-24 in Neil Brown's first year with the Mountaineers. So you've got a battle between 2 second-year coaches in Les Miles and Neil Brown. The game taking place in Morgantown, and 2 teams that to me are relatively similar. But I look at this game for West Virginia. If Jarrett Doege plays the way he did over those final 3 games, the Mountaineers will be flirting with bowl eligibility for the second year in a row. Remember, they went 5-7 last year. Their defense, guys, they have a very strong defensive line. They have a pretty decent secondary as well. They've got playmakers at each of the 3 positions, but I do believe that the defensive line and secondary are going to be the strength for Neil Brown's squad here. They have home field advantage as well. They won in Lawrence last year, and I think that West Virginia is able to get the job done again this year. Expected to be relatively close. This is a very winnable game for Kansas and Les Miles. But West Virginia, I think, continues to take a step forward, and I think they take a bigger step forward in year 2 under their head coach than Kansas does. Kansas, they're 2-2. Now they're 2-6. They've dropped 4 straight games. And again, the Big 12, we've said it, it's relatively wide open. Everybody continues to improve. You've got your kings of the Big 12. You've got your Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Baylor, guys like that, Texas even. And then right below them, you got your middle of the tier. You've got TCU. You've got Kansas State. You've got Kansas, usually towards the cellar. Even Texas Tech is going to be improving this year. So the Big 12 is not doing anybody any favors this year, and it's certainly going to be one of the most intriguing conferences to watch in 2020. So Kansas, we have them at 2-6. They've got their bye week. And I think we can rattle off 3 straight losses here to Texas, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma. Even though they went on the road last year and almost took down Texas, only falling 50-48, one of the best offensive performances from Kansas over the course of 2019. Even though they led that game 48-47 late in the fourth quarter, it was Dicker the kicker that bailed Texas out in the end. Heartbreaking, gut-wrenching loss for Kansas. Would have been a monumental victory for that program. Even though they're coming off a bye week, even though they get to host the Longhorns, certainly a team that Kansas has really put up big fights against. Beat them a few years ago in Lawrence, almost beat them last year. This is a Texas team that needs to win the winnable games this year. Tom Herman needs these wins. And I think that Sam Ehlinger, he's a guy on a mission. So while I don't think Texas is a playoff contender this year, they are Big 12 title contenders and maybe New Year's Six bowl game contenders as well. I think Ehlinger has a big game against this Kansas defense, and I think this Texas defense improves mightily in 2020 as well. Got them falling to the Longhorns in a game that's not nearly as close as it was last year. We have them falling to Texas Tech, even though Kansas defeated the Red Raiders 37-34 last year for their lone Big 12 conference win. I just don't think they can go on the road to Lubbock and steal a win. This Texas Tech team should improve on both sides of the ball. And that's kind of hard to do offensively, considering they were the 11th ranked offense in the country last year. But if Alan Bowman stays healthy all season long, this Texas Tech passing attack is going to be very tough to stop. I don't think Kansas is the team that can automatically come in and shut it down. Even though Texas Tech's defense was one of the worst in the country last year, 127th in the country last year, I think they improved from about 127th to at least 115th or 110th. And while it doesn't sound that great, that's a huge improvement that could be just enough to get them to the postseason. It's at home for the Red Raiders. Their passing attack ends up being too much. Kansas is not a team that I think can keep up in a shootout this year. They dropped that game and then naturally dropped the game to Oklahoma. They only fell by 25 to the Sooners last year, and while the Sooners should take a little bit of a step back in 2020, it's not going to be a major step back to the point where they fall to Kansas in Norman. So at this point, Kansas is stuck with just 2 wins. They're 2-9, and unfortunately, we're going to make it 2-10. They fell to TCU 51-14 last year, and I really just don't see this Kansas team at home being 37 points better than they were last year. Keep in mind, TCU was a 5-7 team in 2019 and did that to a good Kansas team, a solid Kansas team, one that was better last year than I think they're going to be this year. TCU now returns their quarterback in Max Duggan, gets a 5-star running back in Zach Evans, has a relatively decent wide receiver core, and their defense is one that's very, very underrated. TCU had 6 games decided by 1 possession last year. They have the talent to surprise some people in 2020. Now, I know this is a home game for Kansas, and when you look at their schedule, maybe they're able to pull off a win against TCU. Maybe they're able to pull off a win on the road against West Virginia, or maybe at home against Boston College. But I really don't see this Kansas team exceeding 3 wins in year 2 under Les Miles. We have them taking a step back, going 2-10, guys. 2-10 for the Jayhawks in 2020. The talent is getting there, guys. The coaching staff is getting there. I 100% believe that next year could be the year that Kansas maybe breaks through and flirts with bowl eligibility. But like we said, this is one of the most ambitious and most difficult rebuilding projects in all of college football. But the good thing for Kansas fans and for you Kansas faithful out there is that you have to understand you've got a great head coach leading this rebuilding project. Les Miles has won everywhere he has gone, and there's no doubt in my mind that he will win at Kansas. It's just going to take him a few more years. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to visit our new website, thegridironexpert.com, and follow our social media pages over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for exclusive content, news, and offers that you do not want to miss. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.